And where this becomes important and how we keep ourselves in that appropriate, I guess, range, and going back to the blood pH, 7.35 to 7.45, and I mentioned the fact that this is one of the most tightly held ranges we have, that you are 7.35 to 7.45. So don't buy into sometimes some of the marketing where somebody will say, oh, the reason you're not feeling well is because you're too acidic. Okay, therefore you need to buy this special water, or you need to buy this special product, or you need to do this, or you need, no. Okay? That 7.35 to 7.45 is a very tightly held range that your body doesn't do very well, okay? Because the reason for that is if you took, and we haven't talked about these yet, okay, but if you look at proteins in your body that help with chemical reactions, we call them enzymes. Well, it just so happens proteins have a very specific shape, and they have to have that shape to function the way they're designed to function. And when that shape isn't right, then the function isn't right. And you know how there's kind of a perfect temperature environment that you want to go outside? But if it's a little cold, you're not going. If it's a little hot, you're not going. Okay? Your requirement of your blanket, your fireplace versus your air conditioner, you're constantly kind of saying, okay, I'm going to go out during this period of time because that's where, okay, I'm not going to freeze and I'm not going to melt. Okay? Or that's where you're the most comfortable. Well, these proteins have a very specific structure that we're going to study in our next module. Has a very specific structure that makes them work the way they're designed to work. Well, that structure is dictated by pH. That as the pH changes, that structure changes. And as that structure changes, that enzyme doesn't work right. Well, when do those enzymes work the best? Well, it just so happens that they work the best in this range. So if you actually graphed what we would refer to as enzymatic activity, how well they work, it's going to produce, and we'll see if I can get this as symmetric as possible. It kind of leans a little bit, it kind of leans to the right, but you get the idea. That if we were saying, all right, if 7.40 is the middle, the peak of enzymatic activity, in other words, where does it work the best, what's going to work the best, right in the middle of that pH range. So as you become too acidic, the shape of those proteins and the function of those proteins isn't right. As you become too alkaline, well, the shape and the function of those proteins doesn't become right. And so our 7.35 and our 7.45, that range is very important. And to show you how important, to just tell you, I can't really show you, to show you how important that range is, let's say you moved to 6.9. Okay, so you're only moving less than 4/10 of a pH number. Okay, if I knew that your pH was 6.9, okay, I wouldn't worry about finding you. I'd worry for you, but I wouldn't worry about finding you because I would know where to go find you. I would take one of the local hospitals, if this is where you lived, okay, if you're not in the online class, okay, if this is where you live, I would just go to the ICU. I would go to the intensive care unit of one of the neighboring hospitals and I could find you. Because just that change down to 6.9, 7.0 even, hey, you've got something severely wrong and your body's not able to compensate for that. And you are seriously sick. And so when people say, oh, the reason you're sick, you're not feeling well today and you're tired all the time is because, you're too acidic and you need to consume this and that. No. Okay, you are 7.35 to 7.45. Now, do you shift down and up? Well, obviously you do. Because sometimes, depending on what you eat and what you're digesting and your exercise and all of those things, do you change? You do. Okay? Do you change out of that normal range? No, you don't. Okay? Unless there's something severely wrong. So we get into scenarios where our patients are too acidic or too alkaline. Now, for the most part, when you get patients coming in the emergency room or in the ICU or in the hospital, okay, by and large, most of those cases are going to be that they're a little too acidic because there's stuff that's going to make you too acidic. And we're going to describe those just a little bit. All right, so the way we handle this, okay, so kind of going back to what I was saying about this whole 7.35 to 7.45, well, how do we, with all the things going on, the exercise and our diet and all of our metabolic demands and what we do of moving hydrogen ions around and doing that, and we're made of water and all those things, how do we keep that 7.35 to 7.45 so well? Because if we didn't have a way to handle all these hydrogen ions, we would, on a daily basis, we would become too acidic. too alkaline, too acidic, too alkaline, too acidic, too alkaline. And it would be very detrimental to us. So what we have to have is a system where we go 735, 745, 735. In other words, we move up and down within that range, but we still stay within that range. And what does this for us are chemicals that we refer to as buffers. We have buffering systems. So a buffer is or acts on hydrogen ions and hydroxide ions so that the pH is kept relatively constant. And that goes back to, remember, if a substance releases hydrogen ions, it's an acid. And if it releases a lot of them, it's a strong acid. If it releases a few of them, okay, it's a weak acid. So what we want to do is we understand that we will have hydrogen ions released as part of normal metabolism. And we will shift hydrogen ions into our digestive system to digest, and therefore we would become too alkaline, okay, overall, because we've moved those. And that happens. If you eat a big meal, we can test your blood pH, and you're going to shift to be more alkaline because you've moved hydrogen ions into your digestive system. So we're constantly moving around, but we can't have these huge changes because we want to keep this very narrow window. And so basically what we have is we have what we call a buffering system. And there's a number of buffers in our body. The protein that carries oxygen, okay, the red stuff in your red cells, okay, can act as buffers. You have proteins that are buffers. Okay, well here we have one of our most important buffering system in our body, and we call it our carbonic acid bicarb buffering system. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to manage these. If we want to be more acidic, we release more of them. If we want to be more alkaline, then we sponge up or tie up more of them. Because the more of these we have, remember that's what we're measuring with pH, the more of these we have, the more acidic we are. Okay, the less of these we have, the more alkaline we are. Well, we can't become, okay, remember our little graph, okay, can't go too low, can't go too high, got to be kept right in the middle. So the way we manage these, now notice with this reaction, carbonic acid in the middle, bicarb over here, we're going to be managing hydrogen ions. And notice with these chemical reactions, notice the double arrows. The double arrows mean that this is a reversible reaction. In other words, I can make this equation, okay, physiologically, the body can make this equation go this way, and physiologically it can make it go this way. So I can go to the left, I can go to the right, either way. Now, the question I have for you is, which direction would I shift this equation to become more acidic? There's your question. Which direction would I shift this equation to become more acidic? So ask yourself, when I'm measuring pH and when I'm measuring acidity, what am I measuring and what do I have more of? The answer being hydrogen ions. So if I shift this equation to the right, that means I'm releasing more hydrogen ions. Therefore, I'm becoming more acidic. If I'm taking these hydrogen ions and adding them to, in a synthesis reaction, to bicarb, if this is combining with this to make carbonic acid, that means I'm taking hydrogen ions and making hydrogens out of them. Well, remember, pH scale, I don't measure hydrogen atoms. I measure hydrogen ions. Now, is carbonic acid still an acid? Sure. It releases hydrogen ions, but it's not very many. And so I can take all of these hydrogen ions and get bicarb to act as a sponge and make it not a hydrogen ion anymore, but a hydrogen atom, because it makes a covalent bond and forms carbonic acid. So I can take all of these hydrogen ions, which would be making me, fill in the blank, acidic, and now pick them up, and now they're not hydrogen ions anymore, so I'm more alkaline. And then what I can do is I can take an enzyme and I can break that down, and I can form, water and CO2. And by doing so, can I get rid of these two? Sure. I can sweat it off, I can pee it off, and I can breathe it out. So I can take hydrogen ions and I can get rid of them, therefore making myself more alkaline. Or I can hold on to these two, form carbonic acid, release hydrogen ions, and make myself more acidic. So if I'm, quote unquote, okay, within the normal range, if I am too alkaline, I want to save hydrogen ions. Don't breathe them out, don't pee them out. Okay? If I am too acidic, then I can get rid of them. So I can constantly shift from one side to the other to maintain the 735 to 745 with a molecule, carbonic acid, that is very stingy with hydrogen ions and releases a few when I need them, okay, saves a few when I need them, because it is a weak acid that we described before. So really, and we're going to discuss this in great detail next semester, we kind of want to look at each side of this equation. So, well, who maintains what here? In other words, which system of the body maintains this and which one maintains this? Well, to give you a little bit of a preview, well, where do you maintain your CO2 level? Your respiratory system does. Where do you maintain your overall bicarb level? Your renal system, your kidneys do. So my kidneys regulate this side, my respiratory system regulates this side. So I can save CO2 if I want. Well, my body can, but I can too for a short period of time. Am I saving CO2? Sure I am. Okay. Can the body make me pee more, pee less, and get rid of bicarb? It can. So those two systems are constantly maintaining this 735 to 745 by shifting that equation one way or the other. So these buffering systems become very important to us. Okay, our most important in our blood is the bicarb, carbonic acid buffering systems, but we have phosphate buffering systems. Remember, our citric acid, okay, is an example of our weak acid. Anything that can pick up hydrogen ions for me, okay, can help act as a buffer, because I don't want a whole bunch of those, because I don't want to be acidic. Okay, and we'll get into a lot of detail on that later. Okay, but hopefully that helps.